Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love these watches, we're waking up with watches, and everything is for sale. Reach out to me, Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing information about any watch on this show. We also love to build inventory. We will buy one watch, we will buy an entire collection. We also love to facilitate trades. Trade a watch you're not wearing for one you could love. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com to buy, trade, or sell luxury watches. Let's take a look at a watch that represents the latest of the Yacht-Master family. So this is the Rolex Yacht-Master 40, the latest revision, 126622 in platinum and steel. The platinum bezel is bidirectional because this is not a dive watch, so we have this lovely platinum bezel that is platinum on its top, platinum through its core, platinum on its edge. It is a solid piece of the magic metal. Now, it's a yachtsman's bezel, which means you're supposed to use it to time things in broad daylight and on the surface. That's why it turns in either direction to more rapidly and conveniently center on the minute hand. We've got a bright blue dial, sunburst, steel case, 40 millimeters, an elegant case profile. You can see this is not the case that you find on a Sub or a Daytona or a GMT. This is very much its own thing, although if I had to remark on the family resemblance, I would say it's probably closest to the Daytona, with the notable exception that it's not a chronograph, but it's not squared off, it's not sheer, it's not the super case. Now there's plenty of luminescence here, and when I say plenty, I do mean plenty. This thing is an absolute torch. In that regard, it is the equal of the Submariner, with the exception of the non-loomed bezel pip, 70-hour power reserve, 100-meter water resistance, anti-magnetic, shock tolerant. It's equipped with a clasp that has double locking, and then you can see that there's a 5mm Easy Link system. Snap in, snap out, fine-tune the fit with Easy Link. It's a great way to make adjustments on the fly if you need to. When I talk about double locking with the clasp, let's get a little bit closer. Let me clarify that. You can see that there's a beak and a hook, and these two things, note the hinged spring-loaded action, these two things snap together just like that. And then the second lock is the clamshell. So it's actually a double locking factor. It doesn't pull open easily. You need to unlatch by raising that little release switch. Now, throwing it on the wrist, I will say this. It wears beautifully. It is flatter, and significantly so, than a Submariner. It also flatters my wrist, as I have a rather small wrist, and it's oval across the top, flattish, if you will. So if you look at my wrist here, I would say as long as your wrist is 14 centimeters circumference or larger, you're going to find that this wears well, making the Yacht-Master more of an option for a lady now that the Sub is a 41 millimeter. Now, if you want something that's a little bit broader across the wrist, but even thinner in profile, 42 millimeters in diameter, but only 10.9 millimeters thick, this is the Girard-Perregaux Laureato Automatic 42. This is a Eastern Arabic numeral special dial with matching date disc. So you see, it's not just the dial itself, it's also the date disc. And you will learn all of these numerals in time. But this watch, a rather subtle take on the Eastern Arabic numerals. We have another one that is bright turquoise, same model, just a very different dial aesthetic. Now the watch has inside one of the best calibers that GP's ever made. It's the 1800, and it's quite impressive. The watch is 100 meters water resistant, and the movement is much larger than the old 3300. The 3300 is 26.2 millimeters in diameter. This is 30, so you can see it better fills the case back. The beveling is quite attractive, and while it is undoubtedly started by mechanical means, you could see that it's probably finished using hand-held tools, probably something along the lines of a buffer tip on a drill body to create these lovely mirrored, seamless bevels that don't feature milling marks. You can also see the architecture is impressive with this lovely symmetrical barrel bridge, and then we have stripes linear across the bridges, circular, concentric on the rotor, this engine turning on the base plate, and if you look carefully, you can see the little locating pins used to locate the bridges on the base plate. Those pin heads have been polished like you would find on a Patek. You can also see that the barrel itself features solarization and the ratchet wheel is black polished. Again, 100 meters, water resistant. We'll throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference. You can see it is really quite flat. It's a broad watch, though, at about 52 millimeters from end link to end link. It has an impressive stance on the wrist, but I'm going to recommend your wrist be 15 centimeters circumference or larger to wear this one. Now, the GP Laureato is one of the original integrated bracelet steel sports watches from 1975 when the first one arrived. It really was one of the plank owners of that era when this type of watch first came into vogue. Well, that type of watch is back in vogue, and it has been for at least the last 4 years, and the Laureato has returned to reclaim its place in the pantheon, and it truly is one of the originals. That said, not everyone with a recent effort in the space can be dismissed so easily. Urban Jurgensen, a watch brand with Danish origins, today run out of Switzerland and owned by Kari Voutilainen. Urban Jurgensen launched back in 2019 the One collection, which is a very different take on the integrated bracelet steel sports watch. As you can see, a wonderfully fluid, almost organic cross between a round case and a tonneau case. We have this fully integrated tapered bracelet, and it is incredibly substantial. We have what Urban Jurgensen describes as a soft white dial with a Vague or wave pattern at center, beautiful blued hands, and applied and polished hour indices. Now this is real guilloche, rose lathe stuff, not stamped, so it's the high grade that you would expect on a watch from a brand with this kind of history. There's also plenty of luminescence. You'll find no shortage of that in the dark, and you'll appreciate that the hands are actually two-tone with a combination of polished metal and then fire blued accents. Pop open the clasp. You're going to be impressed by the movement in here. The watch features 120 meters of water resistance, so it is a true sports watch in that sense. Do my best to arc this around the camera now. You can see that it is a modern, large-scale movement, broad enough to fill this case back. They're not cutting back on materials. A 22-carat winding mass, not 21, not 18, and God help us, not gold-plated tungsten. This is a real 22-carat mass for maximum winding efficiency. You can see that there's a Côte de Soleil or sun ray striping motif, so it's not parallel and they're not circular. It actually radiates out from an imaginary center point atop the balance, which, by the way, is equipped with a full balance bridge and a free-sprung architecture for maximum shock tolerance. You can also see that the 3 Hertz balance is also enormous, with a huge amount of mass helping to mitigate against shock or concussion-induced timing deviations. We have both black polished and fire blued screws here on this movement. You'll also note the combination of both circular satination and solarization on different wheels. Take a quick look right here on the wheels adjacent to the rotor. You can see downstream from the rotor, we have polished individual teeth, which is a rare refinement that you see on super high-end watches. You'll also find that the beveling is broad, mirrored, and lustrous. It is wonderful to look at, and all of this comes with a 3-day power reserve. You can see that beveling, very impressive and nicely done. The watch does wear large, though, so I'm going to recommend your wrist be my size or larger. I haven't sized this down. You can see there's a little bit of a rigidity to the bracelet. It doesn't want to pull straight down out of the lugs. It's easy to wear once it's sized down, but even so, given the span across the wrist, I'm going to recommend this one for wrists my size or larger, not smaller, just because it does have that rigidity in the bracelet. That said, for a brand on the rise, now in the hand of a legendary artisan and shrewd businessman in Kari Voutilainen, Urban Jurgensen is going places, and it's great to be able to get into the brand with a watch like this that has wear-it-all-the-time convenience, as well as the rarity you would expect from such a boutique brand name. All right, from Urban Jurgensen, Danish by way of Switzerland, we have German by way of Saxony. So this is a 2019 100-piece limited edition based on the Glashutte Original 70s chronograph panorama date. This is the green gradient or dégradé dial. 100 pieces launched for 2019. The original version of this watch came out in 2014. The green dial version, though, from 19. This is number 75 of 100, featuring caliber 3702 automatic winding. It is a flyback chronograph that allows you to reset and restart without first stopping. 70-hour power reserve, 5-position adjustment. You can see there's a double-digit date with flush discs. That's your hour counter. Chronograph seconds at center. Chronograph minutes at 3. It is a semi-instantaneous jumping minute display. We have a power reserve indicator at 9. It turns full black when fully wound. And you can see that the case is wearable at 40 millimeters in diameter and 14 millimeters thick. Throw it on my wrist. You can see how it wears. It's a large timepiece. I'd encourage you to think of it as more of a 42 millimeter round case. It's often difficult to describe the fit of watches that are not round. This one being roughly rectangular, slightly taller than it is wide. It wears like a 42 millimeter round watch, so keep that in mind. It's also over 100 meters water resistant. You can see that there's no shortage of illumination, automatic winding, a steel case. Geo makes a couple of different straps that are water resistant for this watch. So if you want to take it swimming, you can definitely do that. Just get one of their water resistant straps and you're good to go. Now this is a column wheel regain our focus here. So column wheel, vertical clutch movement. So you can see the column wheel in action. The vertical clutch means you can leave the chrono running full time with no additional hazard to the watch. Also, the vertical clutch means that when you start the chrono, there's no extraneous motion or jump to the seconds hand. It starts without stagger. That precision is one of the virtues of a vertical clutch. There's a good deal of manual finishing going on here. Some of my favorite details being the black polished screws, the black polished swan's neck, and then we have many fire blued screws across the movement, adding a fourth color. We have silver, gold, violet pivot jewels, and then those blued screws. You can see a funny feature that I've only ever seen on these and never on any other watch. We have a little indicator that lets you know on the case back whether the chronograph is running. See, now it's oriented to the right. That means off. Well, now it's oriented to the right and then to the left. So this is how it works. That's off. That's on. That's off. That's on. When you toggle the flyback, it jumps between off and on. It's a wonderful watch with a real contemporary movement that is Glashutte Original's own. Remember, out of Saxony, this is the original A Lange und Söhne, the true predecessor company and successor to Lange was the GUB. That was the collectivized horology in East Germany under the communists. GUB incorporated Glashutte Original, A Lange und Söhne, and many, many others. GUB in the early 90s became Glashutte Original, and the company we know as Lange today effectively restarted without any formal permission using the A Lange und Söhne name. So that is a recreated modern company. This is the original legal successor to A Lange und Söhne. We have a full deploying clasp right there. This watch has a lot going for it. They not only train their own watchmakers and make their own watches at Glashutte Original, they have their own dial factory. They even have their own tool makers who are trained and apprenticed in-house. So truly a self-sufficient and self-sustaining manufacturer. Now I have two very different takes on dress watches to show you. First, orthodoxy. The incomparable Vacheron Constantin Traditionnel Automatic. You can see this reference 87172, 38 millimeters in diameter, in white gold, with beautiful fluted and tapered lugs, a stepped case, and an almost flat conical bezel. The dial, silver opaline, two different silvers, one dark, one light, almost white, half-frosted Dauphine hands for better contrast against the white base. We have a lot of features that you would expect on a high horology watch, including hacking seconds. Don't know why every watch doesn't have that in the high-end space, but Vacheron does include it on this watch. We also have a quick set system for the date in case you wish to cycle the date should the watch run down or encounter an irregular length month. Now the watch includes a lovely automatic caliper of Vacheron's own design on the reverse side, and you can see this watch automatic winding with a 22-karat rotor, and the rotor features its own guilloche pattern. In fact, if you look carefully, you can see the rotor has beveling on its edge. It has a sort of clou de Paris pattern cut with a rose lathe. It has media blasting, and then it has a lapping machine sunray grain outboard. So 4 different finishes just on the rotor. You could see mirrored anglage of the highest variety, Geneva seal on the movement, attesting to the level of finish, a black polished Geneva style stud holder, ceramic rotor bearings, lovely deeply shaded stripes. You can see all of the jewel and screw sinks also feature interior beveling, a rare feature that many brands omit. You can see that the locating pegs to help locate the bridges on the base plate have been black polished on their top. There's satination on the wheels. And then you can see that it's 5-position adjusted, which is the high horology and chronometer standard. Being ultra thin and 38 millimeters in diameter, it wears beautifully, and you can see how well it matches my white cuff today. This is the quintessential Vacheron Constantin dress watch. In fact, this is what a dress watch is supposed to be. But if we want to play what if, the question is, what if Abraham Louis Breguet and his sons were alive in the modern era? What would their wristwatch look like? Well, in 2005, Breguet proposed that it would look like this, the reference 7027BA here in yellow gold, La Tradition, the watch, a traditional take, is part of the Tradition line that incorporates many different variants, but this is the most elemental. The Tradition is designed to emulate the look of a Abraham Louis Breguet pocket watch that included things such as a barrel at center and a visible train of wheels from the barrel down to the escapement. We have an engraved base plate with a 50 for 50 hours. That is the power reserve indicator. Manual wind watch. You can see it uses Breguet's parachute system. Triple parachute would be debitune, but this is parachute. One large steel spring, one of the earliest forms of shock protection and Breguet's original invention. We also have a Breguet overcoil hairspring, which you can see well here. The overcoil helping to center the mass of the hairspring, so in any position the watch will keep very comparable time. The lugs are welded on. The case is cold rolled and then hand finished to remove any imperfections. So between cold rolling the coining and welding on the lugs, the attention to detail and the cost no object fabrication is self-evident. You can also see the use of screws and bars to fix the strap to the case, also a more premium choice over spring bars and more secure. You could see the dial, roselay of the guilloche, but more. That dial is made of a disc of solid gold that's cut and then silvered. And you can see, though this is a very traditional looking watch, it does feature hacking seconds as well as a recessed bolt free-sprung aerodynamic balance. And if you look, you can see that the shape of the train wheels actually cut to look like the spokes on vintage clocks and Breguet pocket watches. The finishing across the bridges is all frosted rather than Côte de Genève, because in Breguet's lifetime, Côte de Genève would not have been used. You can also see that though they're frosted on the top, the bridges are beautifully beveled on their sides, so all of the modern standards are respected. We have polished locating pins for the bridges. Again, that element is present and correct. A black polished stud holder for the hairspring. You can see that we have concentric brushing on the barrel. Then we flip it all over. You can see another power reserve indicator as well as the mechanism that underpins the power reserve. Engraved base plate. This is the 507DR. You can see it has been adjusted to a chronometer standard 5 positions, and it is quite beautiful with both black polished and blued screws. Turn it all over, throw it on the wrist with a 37mm measurement, and that's measuring case band across. If you measure the edge of the bezel, you'll actually get 38. But I think of it as a 37 because that's how it fits me. It is a lovely watch. It wears beautifully. It is the watch that defines Breguet today. A timepiece that's easy to wear, easy to love, and hugely underrated. The value you get here compared to some sort of an F.P. Journe or Patek Philippe or even Vacheron, and I don't think any of them finish better than this in the price range, and even considerably above. This is probably the best kept secret in high horology. La Tradition, available today without a wait and no markup. Consider that advice between friends. That said, if you want a Patek Philippe, I always say get an unusual one. Everyone's got a Nautilus, everyone's got an Aquanaut, and everyone's got a basic Calatrava. So go with something a little bit offbeat, and the officer's watch is definitely that. The officer's watch style is a genre that Patek has produced in the modern era since the late 80s, but it dates back to the first quarter of the 20th century when pocket watches were being converted for wrist use in the trenches, where people needed both hands to operate machine guns, gas masks, throw grenades, either at the enemy or out of their own trench when they came in. So you need two hands in warfare, and you need to wear your watch on your wrist because you can't resort to your pockets. Well, by welding lugs to pocket watch cases, the original officer's watches were created. Now, this is a purpose-built watch, but it has very much the look of a pocket watch converted into a wristwatch. You've got an unsigned onion-style crown. You've got a hinged hunter-style caseback. You've got a rotund case profile. You've got vintage evocative fonts and hands on a dial that includes a sunray guilloche. And then we have these welded lugs, and they are welded on, not crudely like the original officer's watches, beautifully and artisanally, but all the same, that lug sprouting straight out of the case, so at odds with the shape of the case. That is a hallmark of the old officer's watch system. And of course, we would have had screws and bars fixing the strap to the case. And these are not ornamental. These are not skeuomorphic. These are true screw bar fixtures. All of this is what's known as gray gold, 38 millimeters. So gray gold is a white gold that's white all the way through. Patek Philippe has used it since at least 2006. It never needs to be rhodium plated. This watch came out in 2007, 5159G, the successor to the original 5059. So this is the 5159G001, the original variant. It has a sunray motif on the center dial that is cut with a rose lathe, a guilloche pattern, a lovely set of pre-Art Deco numerals. Those are more like Art Nouveau. We have red, we have a sort of off-white cream opaline, we have blue, and we have black on this dial, so there's a lot going on. It is a perpetual calendar. Day, retrograde date, leap year phase, and month, which I adore. Flip open the case back, it's beautiful. You can see the movement in here is a caliber 324, anti-magnetic silicone hairspring, free-sprung 6-position adjustment, Patek Philippe seal, 45-hour power reserve, automatic winding, perpetual calendar, and capable of keeping time to tolerances no worse than the -3 + 2 seconds that I previously mentioned. Taking a quick look on the wrist, it wears beautifully. And it actually wears true to size. Normally watches that have these straight style lugs, and I'm talking about Breguet and RGM especially, and Chrono Swiss when I mention that. But those watches all wear larger than their rated size, whereas these are nicely angled and arced lugs that aren't too long. So this watch wears true to size. If you can wear a 38mm round watch, you can wear this. And with a generously sloped case flank and a 12mm thickness, it's going to fit easily and beautifully on your wrist. All right. I always love to talk about GPHG award winners, and they don't come any more distinct and august than a Greubel Forsey Aiguille d'Or. Back in 2015, this watch, the Greubel Forsey Tourbillon 24-second vision, this won the GPHG Aiguille d'Or, effectively best picture at the Oscars of watchmaking for the best overall watch of the year. It is unusually stripped down for a Greubel Forsey watch. Yes, you do have a tourbillon with an exciting 24-hour period and a manic motion, more than 2 turns per minute at 25-degree angle, and the most exquisite black polished and mirrored steel bridge on the upper and lower pivot of the tourbillon, and you can really see via the domed caseback just how large, beautiful, and rapid that tourbillon carriage is. Free-sprung 6-position adjustment with overcoils on the inner and outer curve of the hairspring. You can also see the power reserve indicator. The scale is in inked white gold, and it has a 72-hour power reserve in spite of the power-intensive complication. Only 22 of these were made in white gold, and it's a surprisingly wearable 43.5 millimeters for a Greubel Forsey. That's downright approachable. You can see blued screws of enormous size, golden chaton fixing pivot jewels, just as they would have in the pocket watch era of watchmaking in Greubel Forsey's hometown of La Chaux-de-Fonds. German silver bridges, but since we're not in Saxony, we're in Switzerland, and we're in La Chaux-de-Fonds, we're going to use the term Maillot, which is the Swiss term for that nickel-copper zinc alloy that we call German silver, but this has been rhodium plated to give it a whiter look than you'll find on a Longa. It's also been frosted with a wire brush to give it that first half 19th century or 18th century frosted bridge profile. You can also see that the bevels are a mile wide and finished probably with gentian wood. You could see the inner angles are as sharp as they come, and Greubel Forsey is not stingy with them. Not only the bevels among the finest you'll find, but where the bevels meet, you get a real circus. You can see right here that cleft seam where the 2 bevels meet. That's as good as it gets. That's real hand finished. You can also see the dial is made of solid gold, it's silvered, and then it's printed. We have blued hands with polished centers, and then we have a surprisingly nuanced case. As you can see, the lugs, they have a little bit of a concave profile. See how they kick outward and flare at their end? And then we have this vertical satination in the mid case. So Greubel Forsey case is a little bit underrated. Robert Greubel's designs often focus on tourbillon cages, dial layouts, visible movements, but his cases are also state-of-the-art, and this watch is emblematic of that. This is a Greubel Forsey that isn't necessarily a rolling burlesque show. Some of their watches can be overpowering, and I get that not everyone's into that, but if you love their uncompromising standards of engineering, innovation, and finish, this Tourbillon 24-second vision is a really great way to get into it. The vision, again named, not so much because there's a lot to see, but because there's only a little bit, and it's presented in exquisite fashion. I'll get as close as I can to give you one last look at that tourbillon. They don't come much more exciting than a Greubel Forsey 24-second tourbillon. Speaking of a burlesque show on your wrist, You had to know this was coming. At the very least, I intimated that it might be. This is a 2022 model year release of 50 pieces in purple sapphire. The entire exterior case, nearly indelible, nearly scratch-proof, everlasting purple sapphire. So it's a material called corundum that is then colored using aluminum oxide and chrome. That's how you turn it purple. It has a little push-button system that allows you to quickly and easily detach the silicone strap. If you want to dress it up with leather or just change the look, you can easily do so. On the dial side, we have a micro rotor that's coaxial with an open mainspring barrel on the back, and it's a 44 millimeter, but it doesn't really wear that large. More on that in a moment. Taking a quick look, you might at first glance think this is a flying tourbillon, and functionally it is a flying tourbillon. There's no upper bridge to block the view, but if you start turning it, you realize that that upper pivot is anchored in a piece of clear sapphire, so it's not technically a flying tourbillon because there is an upper bridge, but it really is a flying tourbillon because you can see it unobstructed. And the finishing of the tourbillon carriage is quite good, including several examples of Hublot's best shot at interior angles, which I appreciate. The tourbillon is genuinely a pleasure to view up close. It's a 1-minute tourbillon. It beats away at 3 hertz or 6 beats per second. There is some lovely lavender lume on this watch, not a lot, but some. And it has a 3-day automatic winding power reserve. You can see that the crown features media blasting and satin as well as polished triple finish. All of the bolts feature the Hublot H, and you will find them prolifically. It's only 14.7 millimeters thick, which impressed me because I expected it to be much larger. And being crafted entirely out of silicone, sapphire, and titanium, it is unnervingly, shockingly light on the wrist. Almost toy-like, which I kind of dig because it looks toy-like as well. This is a pure fun watch. Zero pretense. I'm going to have a good time. I'm going to drive my McLaren 765 LT Spider through the center of town, park it in front of the ice cream shop, order 3 scoops of Rocky Road, and I'm going to wear my crazy Hublot Big Bang tourbillon purple sapphire while doing so. And there are only 49 other ones in the world, so when you own this watch, you're likely to be the only person outside of that Haagen-Dazs with this on your wrist. And it is a good-looking movement. Hublot's high mech movements are always fun and worth your while because you can see not only is it good looking, we'll get a little bit closer here, but it's also nicely designed. The architecture is appealing. The use of sapphire bridges and skeletonization means it's quite easy to see what's going on. The transparency is outstanding, and that goes for the movement as well as the case. You can see that there are many little pivots sunken in sapphire on this reverse side, giving you an easy view of the monochromatic mechanism from the barrel all the way down to the tourbillon, and you can see that the barrel is open with the coil of the mainspring effectively acting as a official, informal, impromptu power reserve indicator. I absolutely love this. And I will say this, though. This is one to buy pre-owned because at its original retail price of $200,000, given the depreciation, I would have serious reservations about recommending this to you. As much as I always like to make a full price sale, it makes more sense to buy it for tens of thousands of dollars of less pre-owned. And remember, between sapphire and mechanical watchmaking, this is going to last generations. Why not get it a few months after the original sale for tens of thousands less, maybe even 50,000 less? If you like it, if you like the idea, reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. Time out, Tim out, and thanks for logging on.